The afternoon, my peaceful little street in Cedar Ridge Meadows turned into a live-action disaster movie. The sun was burning so hot it felt like it was trying to press the whole neighborhood into the pavement. And for a minute, everything sounded like every other day out here. The steady hum of lawnmowers, kids shouting over bike races, sprinklers ticking across identical front lawns, neighbors trimming roses like life was just a brochure. And then, in one brutal instant, that easy soundtrack vanished under a roar as thick black smoke started twisting up from my driveway, rising straight out of my wife's black SUV like the sky itself was on fire. By the time I hit the porch, flames were already chewing through the hood, glass popping, tires screaming as rubber melted into the concrete, heat hitting my face so hard it felt like I'd opened an oven. And people came pouring out of their houses, some shielding their kids, some just lifting their phones higher, because out here, panic still comes with good camera angles, and right in front of all of them, framed by the burning car like she was posing for a movie poster, stood Pamela Ward, self-crowned queen of the Cedar Ridge Meadows Property Association, neon blouse glued to her with sweat, wide-brimmed hat sliding down her forehead, red gas can dangling from her hand like a trophy as she shouted that she was protecting the community. What Pamela didn't know, and what everyone else was about 5 minutes away from finding out, was that the SUV she'd just turned into a bonfire didn't belong to some quiet pushovers she could drown in violation letters. It belonged to my wife, Sheriff Alana Brooks, the elected Broward County Sheriff, a black woman who carried the law in her posture and in her silence. And in that moment, whether she realized it or not, Pamela hadn't just attacked a car, she'd picked a fight with the law itself in the middle of a cul-de-sac at high noon. But it didn't start with fire and sirens. It started the day we moved into Cedar Ridge Meadows, when everything looked perfect from the outside. White fences in a straight line, lawns carved like carpets, kids selling sun-warmed lemonade at the entrance, the neighborhood sign promising order and shared values, which I now know is code for we decide who fits and who doesn't. And for about 3 days I let myself believe we'd finally landed in a calm chapter of life, where Alana could come home from late shifts and our biggest worry would be crabgrass. Then we met Pamela Ward. If you handed the devil a clipboard and told him to play HOA president, I swear he'd show up dressed like her, blinding neon blouses, oversized sunglasses swallowing half her face, lipstick always a little crooked, and that clipboard hugged to her chest like a badge, Bible, and weapon all rolled into one. And at first I thought, okay, every HOA has its busybody, the one who lives to tattle about trash cans and garden gnomes. Then the notes started. Pastel slips wedged in our door frame, fluttering under the mat, each one written in smug, perfect handwriting that somehow managed to sound condescending even in ink. Your lawn exceeds CRMPA height standards. Trash containers must be removed within 45 minutes of collection. Oil streaks in driveway negatively affect neighborhood cleanliness. And we hadn't even finished unpacking before she decided we were a case file. Alana would stand on the porch, iced tea in hand, badge still peeking out from her work bag, reading those notes with a crooked smile. She has no idea who she's poking, she'd say, then toss them aside. But I could feel something else in the air, something sour, because the notes weren't landing on every door, just ours. And it was hard to ignore the fact that my wife, a confident black woman in a tailored uniform and a black SUV, didn't exactly match the copy-and-paste picture Pamela seemed to think this place should be. The SUV became the symbol. To me, that black, spotless beast was just Alana in metal form, solid, dependable, polished, always parked straight as an arrow in our driveway, gleaming in the sun like obsidian. But to Pamela, it was rebellion on 4 wheels. A daily reminder she didn't run everything, and once her obsession latched on, it didn't let go. One furnace-hot afternoon, I opened the front door and found her circling the SUV like a vulture, clipboard pressed against her ribs, pen tapping at her teeth, eyes narrowed as she squinted at the license plate, then crouched down to stare at the tires like she was logging evidence. And I walked out, sweat already soaking my shirt, and asked, "Is there an issue?" She gave me that tight, plastic smile and said, "Just ensuring compliance. This vehicle doesn't exactly fit the Cedar Ridge Meadows aesthetic. It's intimidating. It lowers perceived property values. This is a family community, not." And she swallowed the rest. but the missing words hung there between us anyway. That night, I told Alana exactly how she'd said it. The way her eyes flicked over the SUV and then over my wife's skin, and Alana just lifted one eyebrow, calm as ever. "Let her keep pushing," she said. "People like her always go too far, and when they do, they make my job a lot easier." And she went back to her food while I sat there feeling the temperature inside my chest rise a few degrees. The weeks that followed were just escalation with better props, more notes, more warnings, more neighbors suddenly too nervous to make eye contact, all while Pamela dialed in on that SUV, complaining that it blocked the view, claiming it reflected light aggressively, arguing it gave the neighborhood a militaristic feel, and every excuse was dumber than the last, but the hatred underneath was sharp and consistent. Then came her masterpiece, the fake security team. Two guys in cheap tactical vests, cargo shorts, and discount boots trudged up our driveway one afternoon, CRMPA security, ironed onto their backs like a Halloween costume, one wiping sweat from his forehead as he handed me a piece of printer paper labeled "Official Citation" for vehicular disturbance, and before I even decided whether to laugh or swear, Alana stepped out, leaned against her SUV, arms crossed, badge now fully visible, and said in a tone that could cut stone, "You too understand pretending to be law enforcement is a crime, right? Especially when you're trespassing on the property of the Broward County Sheriff." You could see their spines dissolve. "We were just doing what President Ward told us," one stammered, and Alana replied, "Then you can tell Pamela this is her last warning, and you don't come back here without a real badge and a real warrant." And they backed away so fast you'd think the driveway was on fire. Which, ironically, it would be soon. After the cosplay cops crumbled, Pamela didn't back off. She just got more spiteful. Noise complaints when our house was quiet, written warnings about trash can alignment, a typed accusation that our oak tree violated light distribution standards because it dared cast shade on her flowers, and honestly, if it hadn't been so poisonous, it would have been funny. But through it all, Alana refused to give her what she wanted, a scene. One afternoon, I came home to find my wife calmly washing the SUV, hose in hand, water sparkling off the paint, humming to herself while Pamela screamed from across the street about water usage and HOA guidelines, neighbors peeking through blinds or standing on their porches openly watching. And the louder Pamela got, the more relaxed Alana seemed, which drove Pamela's face from pink to crimson, until her sunglasses slid down her nose and her voice cracked. That's when it truly hit me. Pamela wasn't just angry. She was desperate to push Alana into snapping so she could point and say, "See, I told you she was trouble." But my wife starved her of that satisfaction, and you could feel the tension winding tighter with every failed attempt, like a storm building with no clouds in sight, just heavy air and electricity under your skin. The breaking point came at the Cedar Ridge Meadows clubhouse. Most association meetings were sedatives in paper form, people arguing about mailboxes and pool rules, but that night the room was packed, humid, loud, sunlight turning the glass-walled space into a greenhouse, everyone fanning themselves with folded agendas while Pamela sat up front in a blinding orange blouse, clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. When the board finally opened the floor to community concerns, she practically lunged for the podium, dropped a stack of glossy photos with a slap that echoed, each shot a close-up of Alana's SUV, and announced, "This is the disease infecting our neighborhood," before launching into a rant about militaristic vehicles, falling property values, unsafe feelings, children traumatized by the sight of a black truck in a driveway. She waved charts, letters she'd sent to county officials, blamed us for every perceived problem within a 5-mile radius, sweat pouring down her temples as she pointed in our direction again and again, and I sat in the back, arms crossed, jaw tight, while Alana sat beside me, posture straight, eyes forward, face unreadable except for the slight tightening of her jaw that told me this had stopped being amusing. Then Pamela said the quiet part loud. "If this board refuses to act, then we as residents must. I will not stand by while one family drags us all down, and if I have to take matters into my own hands, I will." Silence. The board tried to smooth it over, to table the discussion, but she slammed her fist on the podium, pointed straight at us and hissed, "Either we rid ourselves of this menace, or I will. And a ripple of shock moved through the crowd, the first crack in her little empire. When we walked out into the scalding night, Pamela was already outside, whispering with her security guys, smile tilted too wide, sunglasses back on despite the fading light. And as we passed, I muttered, "She's not bluffing." And Alana, unlocking the SUV with slow, steady hands, replied, "I know, and that's exactly why she's going to hand me everything I need when she finally acts." I didn't realize how soon that prophecy would cash out. It was one of those afternoons where the air feels thick, where everything is too bright and too quiet. And I was halfway through a glass of lemonade when I heard metal slamming against metal, followed by frantic shouting, and something in my gut twisted hard because I knew the storm had finally broken. I ran outside, and there she was, Pamela Ward, standing dead center in our driveway, neon blouse plastered to her skin, hat crooked, hair stuck to her forehead, holding a red gas can, trails of gasoline snaking across the driveway, and under Alana's black SUV, the smell of fuel sharp even over the heat. "Pamela, what are you doing?" I yelled, rushing down the steps, concrete burning my bare feet. She spun toward me with wild eyes and a grin that didn't belong on any sane face, shouting, "I'm saving this neighborhood. I told you people didn't belong here." Nobody listened, so I'm fixing it myself. And in her other hand, glinting in the sunlight, was a lighter. Alana stepped out onto the porch, and everything about her shifted, back straight, shoulders set, voice calm but edged with pure steel as she commanded, "Pamela, put the lighter down, drop the gas can, walk away from the vehicle now." But Pamela was already gone. She flicked the lighter to life, tiny flame flickering against the harsh daylight, and let it fall. The gasoline ignited in a rushing whoosh, fire racing under the SUV and exploding upward, the vehicle swallowed in flame. Black smoke twisting into the sky, neighbors screaming, phones lifted, kids crying, heat slamming into us like a wall, tires shrieking, glass shattering, paint blistering and peeling in seconds. Pamela stood in front of the inferno, chest heaving, face gleaming with sweat and madness, shouting, "I did it! I saved us all," while some neighbors yelled, "You've lost your mind," and others froze, caught between long-ingrained fear of her and the horror of what she'd just done. I lunged forward, but Alana's arm barred my chest like a steel bar, her voice low and unnervingly calm. "Don't. Not yet. She just burned your car." I choked. But my wife had already pulled out her phone, dialed, lifted it to her ear, and said just 4 simple words, "It's time. Send them." Then hung up and turned her attention back to Pamela, who was now pacing like a dictator in front of a burning monument, proclaiming, "This is what happens when outsiders ignore the rules. I am the association. I protect this neighborhood." Then the sirens arrived. First a distant wail, then louder, closer, until 3 Broward County Sheriff's Office cruisers burst into Cedar Ridge meadows, lights painting the smoke red and blue, tires crunching, engines rumbling, neighbors stepping back, shading their eyes. Pamela lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Finally," she screamed, waving her arms. "You're here to deal with these people. Over here, I did what you couldn't." The first cruiser screeched to a stop, then the others, doors flying open, deputies stepping out in full uniform. And every camera on the street caught the same thing. They did not go to her. They walked straight past her and formed a line in front of Alana. "Sheriff," the lead deputy said, snapping a salute. "Perimeter secured, fire department en route." The entire cul-de-sac went quiet except for the crackle of burning metal. "Sheriff," Pamela repeated, the words stumbling out of her mouth like it didn't fit, sunglasses sliding down her nose as Alana descended the porch, removed her own glasses, clipped them to her pocket, badge flashing in the harsh afternoon light. "That's right," she said, voice steady, carrying over every other sound. "Sheriff Alana Brooks, Broward County Sheriff." You could feel the shift, like someone had tilted the whole street. Gasps, murmurs, a couple of stunned claps. Neighbors who used to whisper about us now staring at Pamela like they'd just woken up from a long, stupid dream. Pamela, of course, went down swinging. "This is a setup?" she shrieked, pointing at Alana, still clutching the half-empty gas can. "She's the problem. I did this for you. Arrest her." "Ma'am," the deputy said, hand resting near his holster. "Put the gas can down." Instead, she clutched it tighter, spun toward the crowd, and screamed, "She doesn't belong here. None of them do." And that was it, the last line of her own indictment. The moment gasps turned to boos, people stepping away from her, phones zooming in, capturing every hateful word. The deputies moved, gasped and kicked away, arms twisted behind her back, handcuffs snapping shut with a metallic finality that cut clean through the chaos, and Pamela Ward, queen of the cul-de-sac, was walked past U.S. red-faced and screaming as Alana simply said, "Read her rights." And the law was spoken loud enough for every neighbor, every kid, every camera to hear. In the days that followed, the videos spread, the headlines wrote themselves. HOA president arrested for arson against county sheriff. Her mugshot became a meme. The association scrambled to pretend they hadn't fueled her madness, and Pamela went from feared ruler to convicted felon, banned from holding any HOA position ever again. Our SUV was gone, but the insurance check wasn't, and soon enough a bigger, taller one sat in the driveway, black paint gleaming, and no one dared complain. If anything, people started saying, "We're just past the sheriff's house, the one with the big black truck out front," like it was a landmark of safety instead of a threat. One evening, as the sun dropped and the cul-de-sac glowed soft and gold instead of harsh and hostile, I asked Alana, "Do you ever wish we'd fought back harder sooner, before it got this far?" She took a slow sip of tea, eyes on the quiet street, and said, "No, because sometimes the only way everyone sees the truth is when you let a bully show the world exactly who they are." And she was right, because in the end, it wasn't our SUV or our skin or her badge that destroyed Pamela's little empire. It was Pamela, her obsession, her prejudice, her belief that a title and a clipboard put her above the law. If this whole mess taught me anything, it's that real power doesn't scream or shove notes under doors. Real power is patient, steady, recorded, the kind that doesn't have to prove itself, because when the line finally gets crossed, it arrives in uniform, reads rights out loud, and lets justice do the talking. So I'll ask you this, and you can tell me in the comments. When someone like Pamela, with a tiny bit of power and a huge ego, finally hits the wall of real consequences, do you see it as justice, karma, or just the inevitable crash of a life built on control and fear? And if you'd been standing on that driveway with me, would you have waited like Alana, or tried to stop the fire yourself?